Professor Saville spoke about this looking glass and how we're in this topsy-turvy world, a world that's all over on its head, basically. And one of the things I was thinking coming to this conference was how our world has changed since the last time I spoke to you. My first slide, when I spoke to you last time, we were right in the middle of what Gita spoke about at that time, and we thought we'd never get out of it. We thought, oh, it's terrible. And I remember putting up this slide and thinking, ooh. And that was the days of load shedding, because all of you were thinking, is this conference going to go on? Where is it going to end up? And load shedding had us in its grip. And so we were living through a time of huge uncertainty, a time of what's going to happen now. And you could see it in the things that were happening. The rand was nosediving. All of us in the room kept on asking, what happens? What happens now? And we weren't sure about things, how things would pan out. Uncertainty was the name of the game, and it just continued and continued. And the key thing was that everyone was asking, what about us? Where's our leaders? Are they around? Were they going to come to the rescue? And no one was coming to rescue us. But from that low, you could see things changing. And the big change was what came last year on 29 May. A massive, massive and consequential election took place. And the ANC, for the first time in history, talking about taking the Botswana example and others, the ANC, which had been in power for 30 years, went to below 50%. The DA got a little bit more. The new party, MK, came along. And you had a whole new thing happening in South Africa. And that is to say, we had Helen Zille and Cyril Ramaphosa and everyone else in the government of national unity. So from a huge down, particularly over the past 6 years, you could see things changing. And those things were essentially the mood in the country. People began to say, oh, it's changing. And this shows you business confidence after the election. Q3 shows you that boom, suddenly everyone was feeling like, oh, we've made a turn, things are going to be better, and everyone was very, very positive about the country. We were back. The rand was doing well. Eskom had suddenly changed. We wish everyone was a bit shocked. And the thing that Adrian spoke about economic growth, suddenly we could see it. Suddenly people were saying, it's within our reach. And if we can get that, economic growth going, then we'd do it. The president met with the heads of banks here in Sandton, and the chair of business for South Africa, Adrian Gore, said, you know what, it's possible we could do, instead of the 1% or 0.8% or 1.1%, I think IMF said overnight, instead of that, we could do 3% GDP growth by this year, 2025. And that would have been a massive, massive change in the way South Africa sees itself. And all of us were saying, we're definitely back. That was back in November. But then things changed. And again, this is the topsy-turvy world we live in. January 20, for those of you who don't know, but you should know, is the day that Donald Trump was inaugurated as the President of the United States. And with that, massive changes came. Talk about trade, talk about impact on South Africa, talk about what that means, became front and center. Then on top of that, on February 20, because many of us weren't listening, but the biggest thing, the biggest financial financial event of the year, the budget. We thought we were going to have a budget, and at midday, for the first time in 30 years, the Minister of Finance announced that he would not be delivering a budget at 2 p.m. that day. It was the first time that such a thing had happened, and it's a real shock to the system to see it happening. And so what happens, all of us are asking, will this thing hold? Will this government of national unity happen? The ANC was looking at the EFF and looking at other people and walking away from its friends, the DA. And suddenly, all of us were thinking, is that 3% possible that the CEOs were talking about? And so, again, uncertainty had come back into the system. We were not ready for these two massive events, the arrival of Donald Trump and the fact that the GNU could unravel as quickly as it did. And you saw the impact of the rand tanking, South Africa in the crosshairs, and that brought back uncertainty into the system. And that uncertainty is what is holding us back from achieving that 3% instead of the 1% that we possibly might do. That uncertainty is what leads to business, as we read yesterday's papers, that money continues to be held and is not being used in the system to help us build a better country. And so instead of talking about all the big things, and maybe we'll touch on them in our talk today with Adrian, I'm going to focus on two things, and that is the United States-South Africa relationship and the impact of that globally, and the impact of, in South Africa, the uncertainty brought about by the GNU and its presence or non-presence in our future. We're going to need very astute leadership to navigate the waters that we find ourselves in. My view, my contention, is that we need the kind of leadership that we had in the early 1990s to get through this very, very challenging time that we're going through right now. This happens, and our challenges happen as the whole world is going through a massive time of instability, a massive time of change, the change that Adrian spoke about earlier. Within South Africa, you have an ANC that's battling to work out what it is and what it stands for and what it should be. There are those who say, oh, we should renew and so forth. There are those who say, no, we are okay as we are. There are those who say, we've got a fantastic constitution, let's stick with it. Others who say, no, let's try to dominate power. The ANC is not one thing. It's many, many things that are at war within themselves. That leads to uncertainty in our politics. Outside of the ANC, if you're the DA and you're looking at the city of Joburg, you're saying, I can take this, I can make a change here. The ANC says, I can hold on to it. All over South Africa, over the next 5 years, this battle about who wins, who will win in 2029, who will win next year with the local elections will continue, which will add another layer of uncertainty. And of course, Adrian has spoken about the global picture. What's happened to the liberal international order, the change from the center of gravity being in the West to China, Russia, elsewhere. And so what you're seeing is uncertainty and instability across the globe, and that will have massive impacts on policy and on how that policy impacts you. So all of us should be ready for big changes and for the instability and uncertainty to continue. It's something that we have to learn to live with in this age that we're going through. I think we have underplayed the impact of Donald Trump on the world and on South Africa in particular. Donald Trump is in a hurry. Donald Trump is going to break things, and I think we underestimated just how many things he would break. He is all-powerful. He is in the Oval Office. The Republicans control the Senate, the House of Representatives. The Supreme Court leans right. And so he can do what he couldn't do between 2016 and 2020. He can implement his agenda. And he's in a hurry because unlike us here at home, or unlike the Botswana who had the BDP in power for 58 years, if you take the presidency of the United States since 2000, there was a Republican president in 2000. The Americans changed to the Democrats in 2008, changed to a Republican in 2016, changed to a Democrat. They always change around. And Donald Trump knows that his power may be curtailed by the midterm elections that are coming up. And so he wants to achieve things quickly and get to a point where he is satisfied that his agenda is going through. And so one of the key things that he is doing is to go for it as quickly as possible, as powerfully as possible, and change those things. So Donald Trump, for example, gave us a warning that I love tariffs, and I'm going to bring them about when I come in. Many of us said, oh, you know, there'll be guardrails and so forth. Look what has happened in terms of tariffs. Even as we sit here today, last night Donald Trump was talking tariffs, imposing tariffs. The Chinese were imposing a tit for tat. Again and again, you see that actually this is happening. In just 8 months, he's done more to upend the world than many would have expected. In that context, you think about South Africa and say, what's going on here? How is South Africa going to navigate this? South Africa finds itself in a position where it's painted itself into a corner. We've aligned ourselves with states that the United States, and Donald Trump in particular, believes are inimical to the United States. We've said that we'll always be together with the Palestinians. We've said we've displayed preference for Russia, and so forth and so forth. Inside the Trump world, this sentiment from 2015, when he said that South Africa is a mess, is what prevails in the administration. And you can see it in what has happened since January 20. South Africa is the one country on this continent that is mentioned again and again more than any other, more than Nigeria, more than Egypt, more than many of the other big economies. South Africa is the one that is in the crosshairs of the United States, and will continue to be as President Trump continues to tweet, to make pronouncements, and post on his Truth Social and others. And so I think we should expect some kind of action from the United States over and above the executive orders, over above the punitive measures that have been leveled against South Africa. You will see, in my view, some ANC leaders, some leaders in South Africa being subjected to targeted sanctions on individuals and perhaps some organizations, particularly in the African National Congress. There could be some massive movement that might have an impact. It's, in my view, far in the rear view mirror, but influential voices are warning that there's a possibility the Trump administration could place financial flows from US institutions into South African bonds under review. I think this is something that we have to keep in mind that may have an impact on payments on South Africa and so forth. There is a counterbalance. The world is not a straight line. Many people would say, well, the US is doing all this. China is responding. If you think about the tariff measures that the United States has imposed, that has come with China saying, access to China, no trade barriers, no tariffs whatsoever for African countries. So you're going to see that happening as well. However, South Africa finds itself in the crosshairs and will continue to be in a very unhappy situation with the United States. So we all need to be prepared for what is coming. Here at home, I've spoken about the GNU and how unstable it is. I don't think it's going to fall apart. I think that it will take strain towards the local election, probably to be held in October next year, and everyone will want to dissociate themselves from the ANC. The DA will not want to be told that, oh, you have been with the ANC all along, and so forth. And I think that is the point where you may find some real tension and some concern in the markets about what South Africa looks like next. For many people, it's, oh, you know, Cyril Ramaphosa has been the center of this, the glue that's held this GNU together. What happens when he leaves, and he is leaving when the ANC goes to conference in December 2027, and so that will add another layer of uncertainty that we should expect. And so the big jitters will be, does the ANC go with the MK party and the Julius Malema's EFF, or does it continue on a more centrist note? I believe that the ANC would want to go on a more centrist note, but it depends on the kind of leaders that it elects. And so that uncertainty will be a big factor that we should be prepared for. Some risks that I think we should not ignore. Everyone in the world talks about, oh, you know, far-right protests in London. Migration has become a big issue in the Western world, whether it's the United States, the UK, Europe, and so forth. But here at home, we've got our own issue, and we forget that currently, as we sit here, there are people standing at a school gate or at a hospital trying to prevent migrants who may be legal or illegal from entering a hospital and getting care. And so this is something that I think will be a big issue in our society. And if you think about the kind of businesses that have been built around migration on this continent, there will be some impact on that. The second one is that we have a young society all over the world. You're seeing what's happening in Madagascar. You saw what happened in Nepal. Young people are saying, why should I take this? And so they're speaking. It is a flag that I would say all of us need to keep an eye on. In a country with a high unemployment, high inequality that we have in South Africa. Crime, you know more about this, and you're going to talk about cybercrime in South Africa, and so it is something to think about, particularly at a time when the society is not, when society is in such flux. I think the key thing is to remember, and this is a picture of me there, with a fake Instagram post saying that the South African Reserve Bank says that I shouldn't have told South Africans about how to make billions and billions of rand. And so I think we're going to see, with the age of AI and deep fakes and so forth, a lot more of these sorts of crimes happening, and all of them using some sort of payment systems or alleged payment system to do these things. I think it's going to be a major, major issue. Unemployment and poverty in South Africa, we need to do something about that growth that I've spoken about. I do think that there are things that we should be grateful for. We live in Africa. Africa is a continent that has huge, huge amounts of mineral wealth, but it's got something the world doesn't have, When Adrian put up the picture of the new leader of Japan, the first thing you think about, it's an aging society, it's a society whose young people, which doesn't have what we have, and that's young people who will continue to be, we will continue to be the youngest continent in the world, and there is opportunity in that. These people need the banking, not the bank accounts that Adrian spoke about. And I think there is a huge, huge opportunity. We just need to make sure as a continent that we don't end up in a place where our young people are standing up against us, as is happening in Madagascar and elsewhere. This is a picture from the protest in Kenya, which have led, actually, these Gen Z protests across the world. It's not all bad. I know that sometimes I can bring some unhappiness, but I just want to point out one of the things about Operation Vulindlela that everyone talks about as slowly making some successes is the reduction in the cost of data for people out there. People can use smartphones, can access information, can access payments in double quick time. It's becoming easier and easier to do business. And I think one of the successes, and one that we don't talk about enough, is that we're also turning around from Eskom always being the laughingstock of the world. It's changed, and I think it will continue to remain stable. I think that's a positive. When I say the United States will be a big issue in our lives, it's not all like that. A business like Walmart has announced that it's going to buy more stores, open more stores, and brand them as Walmart in South Africa. So when you have a narrative that says that there is a white genocide in South Africa, you also have to ask yourself, Walmart is coming to South Africa, and why would it do that if there was a genocide going on? So these are some of the positives we mustn't forget. I know we talk a lot about, where are the convictions? Some appearances in court are happening, and I think we'll continue to see more. Some institutions continue to work. An institution like SARS, which many of us don't like, is an excellent world-class institution, and that is a good thing. We continue to change from the country we were 10 years ago. We choose our own cabinet ministers now, and that is fantastic and good and great, and it should continue. Finally, I think South Africa's best chance is this continued collaboration between the business sector through BUSA, BLSA, Business for South Africa. If we continue that collaboration, I think South Africa will find its way towards the 3%, but it has to continue. As for yourselves in the room, I know that some of the news that we've delivered might not be too cheerful, and so I've got a bit of some advice for you, that if it gets stressful, find yourself someone. I know many people who say, no, I've got to do something. Look at Eskom, it's falling apart, or this is falling apart, and so forth. But I think the best thing that can happen is for all of you to continue to work within an organization. Business organizations underestimate just how much leverage and pressure and positive pressure they can bring to bear on who we are and where we are in South Africa. And so I would urge you all, it's not a time to be down about things. It's a time to get your leaders in your association to say, these are the things we should be advocating for. And if we get that going, I think we can get to that 3%, 4% GDP growth that Adrian spoke about. Thank you so much.